on Drury Lane.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way.
Oh, my muffin! I'm about to make melon muffins. But what melon should I choose? Well, why, this handy-dandy book that I've been reading all night long tells me that there's so many varieties of melons that I can use. Oh my! What melon should I put in my muffins tonight? Well, this reminds me of the Tribes Hill Heritage Center. They say that Native American cultures are made up of thousands of dialects and languages. Let's discover more about so much diversity within the Tribes Hill Heritage Center.
Pointer. Hi, this is Dance Haycock, and I'm with Tribes Hill Heritage Center. As the sign says, ask us about Tribes Hill Heritage Center. We would like to let you know a little bit about what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go and what it means to the region. First of all, here where I'm standing, we have some very large settler-style cooking apparatus, huge pot over here, and some old-style basketry, and this is an oddle set, which would have been the front piece here for holding your spear, and this is the spears. It's a spear thrower, would extend your ability to throw harder, faster by making your arm go from only this long, where you could only throw like this. You can't get much momentum. If you extended your full arm, you could get a much bigger reach. And if you were to extend your arm the length of the oddle on top of it, now you can make your arrow go much, much faster. And that means you have a lot harder hit if you're trying to take down a large animal while hunting. We are here at the Tribes Hill Heritage Space in the Viaport Mall at 93 Campbell Road in Rotterdam, New York, and we have been asked if we would like to set up here and invite people to join us. There's no charge for that, to come here and see what we have. We have a display here which is mostly Native American work, because that's what my collection is mostly. It's a portion of my personal collection. In the Tribes Hill Heritage Center, we will be combining 10 separate collections, private and museum collections, together in order to make a display worthy of bringing people from long distances, far away cities, and perhaps even around the world to this region to promote tourism up and down the Mohawk Valley. Over a lifetime, I have been collecting Native American things. I grew up as a four-way mix of Native American and spent most of my time in Colorado and Wyoming, as far south as Arizona, New Mexico, and as far north as Montana. When I got 5 of these buildings are designed by Durini Homes, and they are beautiful each. There's slight versions of the picture you were just shown, but they're pretty much the same thing. The first one being the display building with a Native American museum. Each one of these buildings here also have theaters, and they also have classrooms. The Native American display building, of course, that theater would include music and storytelling of Native American style stories. In the next building, which is Women's and Weaving, which we jokingly laugh about the choice of the name, because many of the crafts that used to be women's crafts only or men's crafts only now are done by anybody. The Women's and Weaving building would have textile arts. In the textile arts building, there would be permanent displays of wonderful weavings, quilting, all kinds of things, both Native American and settler styles. This particular building, the Women's and Weaving, is hooked up to go with the events building. In the events building, we have two huge halls, 100 feet by 75 feet. These halls are put together in a way that you can push a button here, and what you end up with is these halls dividing in to 3 large classrooms. This is our settler style cooking, the celebration of the foods brought by people who came to live here. There is the next building, which is the leather stocking building. In the leather stocking building, we would like to reintroduce how to do leather work for the region, not just here. We know that there is a giant demand for leather work where it's in buckskin, elk, moose, deer of different kinds. This is something that is becoming a dying art. If we reteach it here locally, we would hope to set people up in business in the small towns throughout the region, doing leather work, having their own shops and their own styles. If we do that, we know that you probably can't get enough tourists to every single small town. But in the bottom of the events building that we just talked about with the culinary schools, we also have the ability to ship, and we can make a collective ship for the entire region where we can help people sell their wares, not just across the country, but around the world. Everywhere on this property, the kinds of foods that will be available to try are things that the settlers and the native people would have eaten. So it's not going to have the artificial colors. It's not going to have things that were not present here in an earlier time. That means when we want to have turkey for dinner, somebody locally will be raising the turkeys that we would wish. Narragansett and Cayuga turkeys, which are at risk of going extinct. If we don't eat them, there won't be any. Also, partridges, all kinds of different bird that would have been eaten in the time, quail. That means that people in the farms nearby can get grants from USDA to help promote their value added to the community, and in a value-added way, they can get grants to help them work with the Heritage Center. So they're going to be there for both weekends. We have here in the Geology Building, you would find out why the Mohawk River, which goes into the Schenectady and goes its way down to New York City, that Hudson River will turn around and run the other way. People can question what happened to Lake Albany, where did it go? And they'll find out why Lake Albany will be coming back, not tomorrow. Anyhow, there's a ton of geology information that would be shown here. This is basically a natural history museum, of which we have several coming. And this little area here is a mock-up of the Mohawk River and the Schoharie River and where they come together. But it's also the other side rivers. In this place, we can talk about which Native people lived where, how things changed, why they changed. But more than that, we have a portion of the river system that would be running as a natural river would, without any locks or any dams or anything else. What we can do is work this area with children of all ages. The little ones can learn how would a canoe and a bateau The bateau is a boat that was maneuvered by the French up and down the Mohawk River, and it was how things were traded back and forth. The furs came from the Native American people coming down the river. Finished bags that were beaded and such came down the river. What went up the river to the native people was the beads themselves that were coming from Europe. It would be iron pots like you saw earlier. It would be things that they could not necessarily make. Some of those things would include things that had metal in them. So that was not a real strong part of the Native American culture. So they liked knives that were very, very sharp and stayed sharp, and they didn't need to spend a long time doing the flint knapping of them. All they needed to do was sand them down to a sharp edge again. That's important when you live on the land. The additional things that they would have seen come up the river on top of the beads is things like the trade wool. The wool was not something Native people had because they didn't have sheep. And the wool keeps you warm even if you're in a pouring rain. Even soggy wool will keep you warm. So it was something that was really, really appreciated. And that was frequently made into blankets. Yard goods as well were traded, so that what you would have seen is some of the more Iroquois style traditional dress would have been made out of yard goods, but they didn't have the mills to make the yard goods. Those had to be brought in. Amazingly, one of the things people don't think about coming this direction is silk material. That was very highly prized. So little bits of silk material would make it into what Native Americans were working on making. The project is not just designed to be a school of traditional arts. That is our number one goal, and we are chartered as an educational facility. However, we want to encourage tourism through the area. So at the same time that this is a school of traditional arts, that includes horticulture on the land, how things were grown by Native people, the arboretums that will represent all of the things that were put in the Native American Museum. What it takes to make that will be shown on the ground in the form of the plants that it took to do that. Now, there will be some exceptions, because some of these plants that were used to make different kinds of baskets and such are now either extinct or pretty close to extinct. Invasive species like the emerald green ash borer make the black ashes that we make so many baskets with at risk that there will even be black ash in our future to make these things with. Where we hope to have the Native American world represented, not just as what was dug up out of traditional digs of Native sites, but the celebration of what we do all the way through today, what we can do in still the same styles that were done previously. This should be the 7 case. One of these is the 7 case. Additionally, in this area, the areas we intend to assist is basically Fulton and Montgomery counties and all the surrounding counties. That area is in economic distress, I would call it, and they need help. By starting up the tourism industry again, eventually to put buses on the road to take people to these places, if we work it correctly, we can have a year-round tourism industry in this area. That means that what we can have is a scheduled tour kind, a variety of tours that would be, say, tours with children, tours of Native American issues, tours of the Revolutionary War, tours of a huge variety, geologic tours. We could take people to see many things in the morning, to see other things in the afternoon. In the meantime, in the middle, if we schedule it with the restaurants in the area, we can help those restaurants stay in business by bringing them a bus of so many people, 20 people, 40 people, if they're big enough to handle it, and have them staggered scheduled so that they don't all hit at one time. That is another thing we want to help provide, is the tour guides that would help to tell what is the neatest thing about that historic site. Sometimes I have gone to historic sites, they say, oh, well, just ask us if you want to know about something. The problem is that if this is not people's particular field of study, they don't even know enough to ask the question, what is? How does this work? We're not bringing out the best of these individual historic sites because we don't have people to tell others what is really neat about this place. I love the diversity of opinion that is in all these historic sites. When you walk to one in Amsterdam, you will hear wonderful things about a particular historic figure. And when you go to Fort Klock, that same historic figure is not exactly loved. But to have these things told from the many different perspectives, what happened, where did it happen, and hopefully to bring out the missing pieces of information that are not being told. I, for one, get frustrated hearing, oh, well, the Indians attacked. I'm going, okay, what's the rest of the story? Who did they attack with and why did they attack? There is a lot more to these stories than is being presented, and it would be nice to have the more researched end of it presented. One of the most fun things I have had while setting this up, this in the mall display, is to have the chance to sort out what was Iroquois style Native American work and what was Algonquin style Native American work. And through the process of our documentation of all of the pieces, we found the difference was enormous. I love that the way people do their arts and crafts has to do with the stories they were told when they were very, very little as children. They have a theme that runs throughout almost everything they do. And when you find two people that lived side by side for so many years in New York State, and they didn't really change how they did their arts and crafts. It's one of the most fascinating things. We find that the arts and crafts tend to follow the language groups, not necessarily the nearness on the property along the land. So we found that many things that were done by the Iroquois were done by the Iroquois, and the Algonquin people do not do those things at all. We found also that with the Algonquin things, they have particular stitches that they do that we do not see in Iroquois work either. Some of the things we find is, for the Iroquois, there is raised beadwork. That's beads put down in one direction and stitched over in the opposite direction. There's also this materials called tufting, and we find that the tufting, which is a very old style of doing things, is made out of different kinds of animal hairs that are hollow inside, and that we do not find in the Algonquin materials at all. Where both of them do the wampum materials, their stitches often on their baskets are slightly different. On the Iroquois, what we see is single chains on the purple hair, and we see a lot of simple shapes, shaped like pots of different varieties, shaped like boxes of different kinds. What we see for the Algonquin over here is sort of a more daring approach on things. The baskets tend to be more odd shapes, particularly odd shapes. They have bird beaks on some of the baskets, like the orange that we see here. And we have other baskets that have loops, but the loops tend to be brightly colored or colored in some way. Even crisscrosses tend to be rolled. And we find the chaining on baskets, but on the chains of the baskets, they're a double chain with a lock mechanism right in the front here. This particular item that we have here is from the Pacific Northwest, and where almost all rattles are used by giving them a shake in sort of an up-down method. This isn't used in that way. This one would be shaken straight up and down in a way that it is almost like giving a drum beat. We have many drums here, drums that are simple, drums that are beautifully painted, made out of gourds, all different varieties of musical instruments, and we usually celebrate how to do a lot of the musical things when we get together and gather and just put it all together for long extended dances of welcome first when people come, but our evenings are filled with dances that go for hours. They are endurance dances, and it's what keeps us strong for a really long time. This is one of my favorite pieces. This was made by a friend of mine. The antler holder here, carving, is not really a part of what this gift was, but this was given to me by my sister, Blue Sky, and this is actually a knife case with a knife in it. Now the knife case is made out of rawhide, which is it's almost like hard plastic. This is something that was traditionally used. You didn't have to go through the tanning process. All you had to do is stake the hide out and stretch it and scrape it thin, and you had a very hard material. Now when you were working with this, you would have had to soak it until it was sopping wet in order to put the holes in it to add the fringes on the side. You also would have had to do the bend of this so you could get the bend from the front to the back, and you would have had to cut it out while it was sopping wet. Then what you would do is you would let it sit, maybe even with stuffing inside to keep it open, this much for the knife, while it dries out and hardens. Then you would get a chance to paint it on the front. The knife that is in here I find very interesting because it's like none of the other knives I've ever had. I have a large collection of knives and knife cases, but this one is unique. This bone knife, when I ask people what they think it is, they say, oh, well, it must be for fleshing out hides. And I'm going, no. You can see the end of the socket here, and it's extremely super thin, very sharp edged, but this is not in bone a very strong edge. So if you tried to use it to scrape something, eventually if it took a lot of pressure, like fleshing a hide, it would have been near impossible to keep this in one piece. It turns out that this is from the coastal area of Massachusetts, and of course fishing was a big thing in that area. So what would happen is they needed to take the scales off the fish. So when they brought a fish in, they would scrape the scales off with the knife. So this is actually a fish scaling knife, and I don't think I've ever seen a different one, but it's certainly not in bone. There are so many things to see here, so many items that were picked to teach about. So many of these cases have items that there are 4, 5, 6, maybe as many as 10 that it takes to really describe just a single thing that one item represents. We would like to invite people to come here to the Tribes Hill Heritage Center that people are laughingly calling the museum in the mall at the Viaport Aquarium entertainment Mall, Campbell Road in Rotterdam, New York. We also would like you to help us get the word out. We would like to tell people what we are trying to do. Even more than that, we would like to have you help us introduce the Mohawk Valley to tourism from this area. The back portion of our space is dedicated to having tour pamphlets to go forward from here to all of those people who want something to do for the summer. We would encourage you to come pick up pamphlets. If you are a museum or an interesting place to tour, we would ask you to please bring your pamphlets here so that we may hand them out to other people who are interested in taking their kids to go see what you have to represent in your area anytime. Drop by. We have pamphlets here that give out information of how to contact us. And please do. We will be opening a new portion beside us that will have museums from around the area. So museums that are interested in joining us with a presentation here, please contact us. We would love to meet you.
Well, welcome back. I'm still trying to bake the muffins. But finally, I think we're finished. I hope you enjoyed our show today. If you would like to make an order or donate muffins to charity, then please go to the website listed below. With every muffin order, we donate muffins to the charity of your choice. I call it giving your dough to charity. I also encourage you to donate directly to the featured charity today by going directly to our website and getting their information. Thank you very much for watching, and keep on dancing through life by giving to others through love. Let me finish baking these muffins, and see you next time.